Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I've got Adam with me, and we are going to be doing our picks and predictions for week 4. And Adam, thanks for joining me again. And
Yeah, I'm excited.
yeah, so before we get started on our picks, obviously we want to start with BYU, but before we do, what did you make of that game on Saturday?
Um, Man, that was a fun one. I just feel like you don't get many like that in SEC country, playing down to the last play. There was a lot of fight in the Cougars. There really was. They go down 14-0, and you're like, well, that's that might be it. Kind of tough to crawl back from that, but they come back from that. Then they come back from being down 10 in the second half. Just a ton of fight. A lot of complimentary football. Uh, Defense gets a takeaway or a big stop. Offense turns around, turns it into some points. Special teams came through at big moments. And so it was impressive to me that they just kept coming back again, and no matter how much they got down. To me, perhaps the star of the game should be Coach Paua. He's not getting a lot of love, but that was his D line. And there's a lot of discussion around Arkansas shooting themselves in the foot with penalties, which they did. But if you look deeper, the types of penalties they kept getting were holding penalties. You shoot yourself in the foot with pass interference and false starts and illegal procedure, things like that. But holding, when you're holding that much, it means our guys are getting through against a vaunted Arkansas offensive line. So that was my biggest takeaway. Our D line, Coach Pittman said in the post game that our D line just whooped those boys, and it wasn't even the blitz packages that gave them fits; it was the front four. And so to me, that was the number one takeaway. Great defensive line play, hounded the quarterback all day. It really set the tone.
Yeah, no, you really covered it. And so I did a reaction video afterwards, and I had made some notes throughout the week of some things that I'd either thought about or hadn't occurred to me in the moment. And you covered most of what I want to hit. So you're spot on. One thing too is I saw on the Daily Dose, he was talking about available yards. This was on Monday night, so go check it out if you want. But he's talking about how many yards were gained out of how many is available. So if you're starting at midfield, for example, you can only gain a possible 50
Mm-hmm.
versus, if you start at the 20, then there's 80. I shouldn't do math while I record without it in front of me, simple as it is. And so, BYU actually, when you account for how many yards were available, actually did a lot better. And I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but so that says something that about field position, which again goes to our defense and our special teams putting us in good position to score, because we had some good chunk plays that really allowed us to score, but just kind of moving the ball down the field, we did struggle with that. And so that's something, again, that theoretically, especially depending on the opponent and scheme, you can improve upon. So that's the good news. The other good news is, even when you struggle like that, to still be able to come out with a win and your defense holds you in there, and offense, had, like I said, had its moments, certainly has some highlights, but how frequently do you want to be relying on incredible one-hand grabs to get you, a score? Or we had two of them essentially in this game,
Yeah.
and so it was a great win, a great game, lots of ups and downs, and amazing, and it definitely shows the character of this team, and so that gives me a lot of hope going forward. So how does that make you feel after what you saw on Saturday going into the game this weekend?
Yeah, well, certainly encouraging. I was much more encouraged coming out of the Arkansas game that we can pull off some of these in Big 12 play, get to bowl eligibility, and really have a strong year. Kansas is interesting. They're coming off the game where they struggled at Nevada. It was a late game, away game. I don't read too much into that. I think Kansas has been really strong. They played great against Illinois, and so I expect Kansas to really have a strong bounce back game. They're playing in front of a sellout crowd. So Kansas has got a lot of subtle momentum going into this. Um, I think the big matchup's going to be our defensive line against Jalen Daniels. Can we get to him in the same way we got to KJ Jefferson? Can we rattle him? Can we keep him contained from running too much? I mean, Jalen Daniels is incredible, and so it's going to be tough to bottle him up. You throw in Neal, their running back, who's excellent, first team preseason Big 12. I mean, that is a really difficult duo to handle. And our front seven have been really strong. So can they bottle them up? The defense has been very, very good up to this point. Um, for me, the deciding factor is actually Kansas's defense. And I am going to pick Kansas in this one. First time I'm picking against the Cougs this year, but I'm doing it because of Kansas's secondary. I think the narrative coming out of here is that, oh no, can our guys get open? Can Slovis fit the ball into tight windows? And then I think we're going to go into Cincinnati, and Slovis is gonna throw for 400 yards at home against those guys. But I think coming out of here, their secondary is really, really good. We are going to have a tough time getting open, and our running game is not established enough for me to feel like that's going to be a difference maker. And so I think Kansas is going to get their points. They're not going to run all over us. Our defense is gonna show up and they'll play well, but I just don't think we'll have enough in the passing game, which is our strength, to overcome that Kansas secondary. And I think Kansas is going to win it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough one for us. And it's funny to say this, but I actually felt more confident in BYU going into Arkansas than I do for them going into Kansas, which is funny because I feel like they're kind of on the same tier as Kansas in my mind in terms of where they fall in college team hierarchy right now. And so I definitely think BYU can go in there and can give Kansas fits. I mean, obviously we're going to be the toughest test. Well, possibly. I mean, Illinois, it's too early to say how good they are, but um, you know, looking at their other games, not as impressive. So again, what I saw when I looked at the Kansas's games thus far this season is that Nevada really ran it the most on them and really had a lot of. I mean, that's where I think the bulk of their touchdowns were from rushing. And now I know that doesn't tell the whole story. That could have been a huge throw that got him there onto like the 1 yard line or something. But so it seems like they had a more competent rushing attack than the other opponents, and that really benefited them. And we do not have that. I mean, possibly, but we haven't proven that yet. And we
Correct.
haven't shown, like you said, we haven't truly established it. So if we can go in there and really establish the run, then I think that'll open everything up. But I'm just not convinced we have that yet based off of what we've seen. And one thing that gives me hope is that BYU's really capitalized on turnovers this season. That's something that was helpful in just causing chaos. I mean, there were some, actually both teams in the Arkansas game had a fumble loss and then a fumble, but recovered. But just causing that, getting to the quarterback and causing that chaos. But so Kansas has been a little bit sloppy. So I'm wondering, if we can get in there and apply that pressure and force turnovers, then obviously that changes things. Because again, it theoretically gives BYU a shorter field and opportunity for the offense to go on and make a quick strike. So I think there is a path there to success, but unfortunately, I think their strengths and our strengths, how they align, actually benefit Kansas in this one. And our weaknesses, I suppose, in that point. So anyway, I'm with you. I think, and being at home in Lawrence, I think Kansas has this one, but I definitely think BYU has a chance. I've seen the line. It was up at 9.5. And so now it's down to 8.5. I still think it's going to be a close game. And we'll see if that line keeps getting closer as we get closer to the game this weekend. But okay, so well, I hate to be the pessimist. I'm glad not glad that you went with Kansas, but I think I've been really down. But I'm also trying to. Last week, I believed in our ability to go in there and compete with Arkansas. I just didn't want to get caught up in all the hype. As you get closer to the game, it's easier and easier to convince yourself it's going to happen. And I do think that could happen this weekend, but I'm really trying hard not to allow myself to get caught up in
Yeah.
just leads to heartbreak. But okay, so for next game we've got
So
TCU.
so real quick, officially you're picking Kansas?
Yeah, so
Okay.
both of us are picking
All right.
Kansas.
Got to mark it down. So we know what our record's going to be. That's good.
So there's the games we looked at. Let's go on the first half here. So as we already covered, you picked BYU, I picked Arkansas. I'm happy to be wrong about that one. And then the other ones, we were both wrong on the rest. Iowa State, Cincy, and OSU all let us down. And really,
They
I
did.
think I made a pretty strong case for Iowa State and Cincy. And so I'm kind of, kicking myself that I didn't pick at least one of those now in hindsight. And then OSU was just a shocker.
That was a shocker. That was a shocker. But they really the Big 12 laid an egg this last weekend. It was tough to see in a lot of different areas. It looks like we both picked Kansas State though as well, right? Isn't that a miss up there? Mizzou with the 61-yard field goal last minute,
Oh, good
SEC
call.
record.
Yeah. Well, that's going to
So
mess
we
with both of our records.
yeah we had a rough week. We had a rough week. Let's be honest.
Good call. I was obviously so caught up in the win when I made this that I didn't notice. Yeah, you're right. So at least we both had it wrong. So
Yeah.
on the next half, we're much more in line. If I can get this to go. So the only real difference here and only surprise, I don't think there are any other. Oh, well, we both picked West Virginia, though. That was a good call. I felt
Yeah.
like, being at home for them that they were going to come out strong. And then, I picked Tennessee. I thought Utah in the Utah game, Florida showed that they just were not up to snuff and they weren't prepared. And, Tennessee showed that, they've got last year. I mean, I think we both agreed that they probably wouldn't be quite as good as they were last year, but I expected them to be stronger than that. So
Yeah. Tough game for the Bulls there.
yeah, good one on you. So let's see here. So I'll change our percentages. We're both down one pick, but you are up by 6 now. So I've got quite some ground to make up.
Okay. I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Okay. Great. So let's go back to our other one and let's see here. I've got to share my screen again. So just one sec. And here we go. So now, okay. So now we get to it. SMU and at TCU. What do you got?
I like the Horned Frogs in this one. I think they're hitting their stride. I think that Colorado game was a week one blip where they struggled. SMU's a real team. They're not a pushover, but there's a lot going on here with SMU coming out to play their former coach. TCU is still smarting a little bit from that loss, and I just feel like they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, and they'll pull this one out.
Yeah, so I felt like it was going to be opposite. I thought TCU was going to be good, and they were going to come out and rack up a lot of wins based on their schedule early on. And then I thought eventually they were going to get kind of punched in the face, when it looked like, oh, look, we're 7-0 or whatever. Then all of a sudden their schedule gets a lot tougher and they were going to come down to earth. And that happened earlier than expected. But I think in some ways that'll benefit them in their mindset, as you said, playing with that chip on their shoulder. So I also agree TCU. And I think they're going to be one of the tougher opponents for BYU this year.
Yeah.
Oklahoma at Cincy.
Yeah, I'm all over this game because we've got Cincy next week, and so I'll be watching close. FPI loves Oklahoma. I'll tell you, like second-ranked team in the country according to FPI. I don't think Oklahoma's that good. I think they're going to have ups and downs with their offense, but I do think they're starting to hit their stride, and Cincinnati looked vulnerable. I know Miami was a pseudo rivalry game. Anything can happen in those games, but realistically, Cincinnati is boy, they were riding high those first couple games, but it turns out Pitt's not actually that good. And so I don't think Cincy quite has what it takes to get this done against Oklahoma, even at home.
Completely agree. Oklahoma is a solid team. I think it's hard to say how good they are, but at the end of the year, their record might reflect that they're really good. But their schedule is lined up for them to have a lot of success. So again,
Yeah,
I don't think we'll really know. I think Texas will be the which is not too far away. It is really the big litmus test for them. But outside of
yeah,
that, I think they have the opportunity and they're good enough. I don't know if they're elite, but they're good enough to really use that to their advantage and perhaps inflate
yeah.
their their ranking that way. All right, Texas Tech at West Virginia. This is a surprisingly interesting game.
It is. It is. It's going to be really interesting. West Virginia with that defense has shown that they've got some fight in them. It's at West Virginia, so you got to give them some home field advantage. But I think Texas Tech is playing desperate. They want this, and they need this. If they lose this game against West Virginia, look out. Their season's really going to spiral. And they had a lot of hope coming in, a lot of hype. They kind of get to hit the reset button to start Big 12 play. So I'm going to take the Red Raiders in this one.
Yeah, I agree. Again, they lost. They were up on Wyoming, and Wyoming, played Texas pretty tough too. And then they play back and worked their way back into that game, and that was week one. That was somewhat forgivable. They played Oregon really well, and really kind of lost that game. Instead of at the end they were up, and Oregon pulled out an incredible win over Texas Tech. So they played Oregon really well, and a few things go a little bit differently, they easily could be 2-1 right now. So I think they're also another one that's coming out that sees, they really are in a must win, but I think they're better than what their record reflects. And so I think that's going to kind of start correcting itself here. And this is one that Texas Tech has to have.
Yeah.
All right. This next one is actually maybe even more interesting. I stared at this one for a while, and there are so many games this week that I looked at, and I was just like, well, kind of, mainly this one, and then there's a couple others, but that I just looked at and I was like, okay, I have to write down my picks, otherwise, and really pick one. Otherwise, I could come into this video and still be on the fence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of these two teams have looked very bad. So, how do you feel about this matchup?
I think this is in the Big 12, number 13 versus 14, early on in the season. I just they are both struggling. I'm taking Iowa State in this because I think Oklahoma State is shell shocked, and Iowa State has a home field advantage, enough of a chip on their shoulder. Oklahoma State still can't decide who their QB is. If they had some sort of direction on offense, you got to believe Gundy's going to figure it out. He's such a good coach, but something's going on there. And I think that it's not that they lost, it's the way they lost. Iowa State should have had that field goal that was called wide right, and they actually made it. That could have changed the outcome of the game, but they played a tight game. Oklahoma just didn't even belong in the same field as South Alabama, and so I don't see Oklahoma in a bounce back game here. I see Iowa State riding the ship a little bit before they struggle throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And if South Alabama can really limit Oklahoma State's offense, then they're really going to have trouble. All three of those quarterbacks are going to have trouble scoring against the Cyclone defense, and I think that they're capable of putting up enough points. We'll see to pull out the win. So I'm also going with Iowa State on this one. After I'm don't see how anyone could, throw their hat in for Oklahoma State at this point.
Yeah.
So here's another one that I actually found kind of tough when I was looking at it.
I'm intrigued by this because we don't get to play Houston this year, so we look at common opponents, and this is going to be an interesting one. Sam Houston State has a legitimate defense, and they have zero offense. Houston has no offense whatsoever. I think this is another 3-0, 6-0 game, something like that. But I am going pure gut on this, and I'm going to call Sam Houston State with the upset. And poor, I know Houston fans are going to hate that. But I'm not convinced that Houston has enough offense to do anything against the Sam Houston State defense. It's proven to be pretty stout. Um, Sam Houston State can't score, and so do you pick up a fumble? Do you get a pick six? Something to generate some points on the board is all it would take, because I see Houston struggling against Sam Houston State.
Yeah, I wish that Sam Houston State would have played last week, just so we would have had one more data point to see how they performed. But I'm with you on this one. I think that they actually pull out the upset. Houston is kind of in shambles right now. They're really trying to put it together, and it's not that they don't have talent. I mean, they've come out and laid eggs, but then they've also competed, and then yeah, I don't know. So it's tough to say, but I think Sam Houston definitely has a chance, and their defense I think is legitimate, but their offense is equally terrible. So it's going to be a wild one. This one will be certainly interesting to watch. Here is what we were hoping coming into the season was going to be a good matchup: Texas versus Baylor.
Yeah, I can't see Baylor doing enough in this game. I've got Texas. Uh, I figured Texas would have the letdown against Wyoming. They did. They put it together in the fourth quarter enough to maintain their national ranking, but I think they start to hit their stride. This is on the road against a Big 12 foe. They're kind of in the embrace the hate mode in their Big 12 tour before they leave. So I Baylor just hasn't shown enough of anything, any life, any fight, offense, defense, something that can say, yeah, they can compete with Texas. I see Texas winning big here.
Yeah, and more importantly, we just had an ad over here I noticed for adult diapers. So that's probably coming up from my algorithm because I was just searching for that earlier. So just to be
It's
clear,
good. That's good. Don't let anybody miss that.
yeah. Uh, no, yeah, I agree. I actually, so I feel like, before the season, I picked Baylor because I feel like at some point Texas is going to get surprised by a team that, they should be favored over. I don't think they're going to run the table. And I felt like Baylor could be one of those teams. But at this point in the season, I just don't think they have it. They could come out and surprise us, but they have enough questions at quarterback. And at Texas, I think if the beginning of that Wyoming game wasn't a wake-up call after Alabama, I think it will be. And I think that they turn things on, and they're playing with a lot of confidence that I really don't see how Baylor is going to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
All right, this is another fun one.
Yeah. Um, it really is. So looking at this matchup early on, I would have said Kansas State, no question. Plumlee would have changed that equation a little bit, but I was leaning towards Kansas State until I found out who UCF's backup quarterback was. McLean. We played him at South Florida a couple years ago, and I remember thinking, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to be really, really good one day. Uh, and that day's today. I know it was against, you know, a smaller school, but there's not a lot of film on him. There's not a lot of knowns, and UCF is a great quarterback play. I think he is enough of a wild card in this. He is so fast and has a big arm. I think UCF's going to pull the upset here against Kansas State because of McLean.
Yeah, this is one that I struggle with. Obviously having your starting quarterback go down is not a good thing, but the Knights showed that they can still. I mean, obviously it was against Villanova, but still showed that they're kind of running on all cylinders. I think what leaned this way for me was Kansas State's experience and the fact that it's at home for them. So I'm sticking with the Wildcats on this one. So finally, we differ on one. So that's good.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's going to be I think regardless of who comes out, I think this is going to be a fun game, and it's fun to see the new guys matched up against the hateful eight.
yeah, for sure.
All right, so now we're out of conference, so this is a little quick fire, but Florida State, Clemson. Clemson's not ranked anymore, but this is still a matchup. Obviously, for the last several years, the ACC's run through one of these two teams, typically Clemson. But this year, Florida State is the one who has, the criticisms on Dabo Sweeney that he hasn't really embraced the transfer portal or NIL and a lot of the changes in college football. And perhaps Clemson's taken a little bit of a slip because of that. So how do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, I unfortunately, because I love watching Clemson. I like their brand of football, but they've taken a step back. Whether it's that they've lost great coordinators like Venables over to Oklahoma, or exactly what it is that's caused these problems. I do think Dabo's approach to the transfer portal and NIL plays into it, but they just don't. I don't feel like they have the it factor anymore. Florida State's playing with a lot of confidence. They escaped Boston College. I watched the end of that game, which was exciting. You felt like Boston College was going to do it, but Florida State pulls it out and takes home the victory. And I think similar to the Texas-Wyoming game, that's the wake-up call that Florida State needs. I don't think Florida State is a top 5 team. I don't. I think they're playing much better. They might be a top 10, certainly a top 15 team this year. I don't know that anyone in the ACC is going to trip them up because there's just not a lot in the ACC right now. But I don't think Florida is quite as good as their ranking says, but I do think they're good enough to go in to Clemson and beat Clemson.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. I don't have so much confidence in Florida State, but again, weaker conference. And if they can pull out this win against Clemson, I think that path for them to continue riding high and possibly even make the playoff is right there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I picked Seminoles on this one. Okay, this is probably going to be, there's tons of good matchups this weekend, but probably the one gets the highest ratings. So,
Yep. Yep.
Can Coach Prime do it for the 4th week in a row?
I hope he doesn't keep receipts on me because I'm picking against him for the first time. I've bought into what he's doing. I think Colorado is a top 20 team. I don't know that they're a top 15 team, and so I think they're just punching a little too high this week against Oregon. It's at Oregon. I think Colorado comes back down to earth a little bit after their first 3 weeks. I think Colorado is going to be great in that conference. Even though the Pac-12 is tough this year, Colorado's going to have a great year. But I don't see them pulling this out against Oregon. I think the swag only takes them so far, and they're going to run into a really good program here in Oregon, and Oregon's going to come away with a victory by 10 points, 2 touchdowns, somewhere in there.
Yeah, the spread seems a bit high for me. That's a little bit of a disrespect to Colorado, and that's going to be fodder that Coach Prime uses with his team to get them amped up. And they could come out and win this game, and it wouldn't entirely shock me at this point. But I'm with you. I think Oregon's going to be too much for them, and especially they're down Travis Hunter, and they've yet to truly establish their run game, and so Oregon's another one that likes to sling it, but can you do it just through the air and against a team as high a caliber as Oregon? I don't think so. And so, yeah, I think this is where they finally come back down to earth. But either way, this is going to be must-watch TV. I hope it's a close, competitive, exciting game.
Yeah.
All right. So Ole Miss at Alabama.
Yeah, this one's awesome. I love that Alabama is showing their mortality, and I watched a lot of the game against South Florida, and I've said this before. Nothing against Alabama personally. I'm just tired of the success. As a huge college football fan, watching Alabama's dominance over the last 10, 15 years is just, I'm ready for a change, and this is sort of signaling that. So I'd love to see Ole Miss come in here, pull it out. I think they will. Ole Miss has had a tough matchup against Tulane on the road, which they won. I think they'll take away from that a lot of experience. They've got their quarterback in Jackson Dart. Alabama doesn't have a quarterback. And I think Alabama is just sort of dazed and confused, and everybody in that SEC is going to tee up on them this year and think, finally, let's get a little payback. So everyone's going to be amped for this game. And I think Ole Miss is really going to start to set a trend. Alabama's sitting at 13 because of what they've done in the past. Definitely not because of anything they've done this year. They really have shown nothing promising in their first 3 games. Now it's still at Alabama. Alabama's still got amazing athletes. They still got a good defense. Um, but I think Ole Miss wins this one and wins it comfortably.
Adam, what did I tell you about Nick Saban in those early games and about losing to coordinators? Like those are things that he just does not lose. And guess what? I was wrong, and I'm not going to be wrong this time. I struggled with this one because I feel like he was embarrassed by one former coordinator. There's been it seems like some veiled trash talk and some subterfuge by Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss crew. So I could see this being one where he's able to fire up the team and come out and they're at home. But I feel like Ole Miss is playing with a lot more confidence right now, and that I think is going to be the difference maker here. Yeah, I think that that Alabama is going to come back down and show that they're mortal like the rest of us this year, and I think Ole Miss has enough to get it done.
Well, we got to start disagreeing more.
How about this one?
Yeah, yeah. This this one's going to be exciting. Now I think we've talked about the early season games when you finally find out what a team's made of and who they are. This is Utah's moment. This is UCLA's moment. I like UCLA in this because I don't think Utah's figured out their offense and it's going to come back to bite them. I do. I don't think Utah has enough offense to get through this game. I think Chip Kelly's got his team moving, and they're going to score some points in this against a good Utah defense. Utah's so tough to beat at home, but I just think what's been the the poison pill for Utah in the past has been the years when they can't get that offense going, and this feels like one of those years. Whether or not you have Rising in there, maybe it's totally different once he's back, if he comes back, but it just feels like they can't quite get there on the offensive side, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game, and UCLA is going to pull it out.
Yeah, I was thinking all the same things you just said, but I just feel like Utah's defense is going to be tough. I don't know if we've seen enough from either team to truly know, as you were saying, who they are at this point. And I don't know if we've seen enough from UCLA to really give me reason to believe that they're going to be so much better to outplay that Utah defense, which has been and always is incredibly stingy. And as you mentioned, tough to beat at home. So just like I'm picking the Jayhawks so I can reverse jinx and help BYU win, because I'm afraid if I pick them, they'll lose. I'm hoping that if I pick Utah, it didn't work against Baylor, but it almost worked, that UCLA will win. So this is another one that I'd be okay being wrong about. But again, it's not that I have so much faith in Utah this year because, like you said, their offense is struggling. It's just I don't really know what UCLA is at this point either.
Yeah.
And Chip Kelly's teams in the last several years haven't shown me enough to think that, I don't know, to pick them at this point. Here's another one that, this is really intriguing, especially all that's happened with, being the two left behind in the pack and all that's going on with that. And they're both kind of America's team right now. I feel like everyone's like, feels bad for them in the hand that they've been dealt. And they're smaller markets and kind of blue collar teams and these underdogs, so to speak, in many ways. And yet they're up against each other. So how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I know it is one that everybody kind of cheers for, and it really is the worst part of realignment, which I certainly haven't been opposed to realignment. I'm certainly in the minority here. I don't mind to see the Pac-12 dissipating because I think they were poorly managed, and it was inevitable with the way they had that set up. But I do feel for Oregon State and Washington State. You hope for however the pieces fall that they're able to come out of this okay. This game, however, I have Washington State in this one. Oregon State's been hyped up a lot. I think they're going in the right direction as a program, but it's actually because I've watched Ugalele struggle a lot when he played at Clemson in big moments, and I'm just not confident enough in his game yet to pick Oregon State in a tough matchup. He could prove me wrong. Obviously, Clemson's still struggling and he's left, so maybe Clemson was the issue there. But I felt like when the spotlight was brightest, when the games were tough, he didn't come through for Clemson when it mattered. And because of that, I'm going to go with Washington State.
Yeah, I think Washington State's wins and their resume to this point is a little bit more impressive. You look at, winning against Wisconsin. I mean, that right there is is im- is way better than anything else that Oregon State has done. They both have comparable wins. UC Davis and you got Northern Colorado. They've everyone that scored on them has been in around the 20s, but they've just been able to put up their points no matter what. So I've been really impressed with that, and it is it's at home, a home game for them, and so it made me want to lean that way. But before I started looking at anything, my gut just told me Oregon State, and so ultimately, I think it's going to be close enough that I decided to stick with the Beavers on this one. This was just a
Okay.
gut pick. But yeah, I think Washington State very well could pull this one out. Okay, this one is going to be a bounce back for Arkansas at LSU. Perhaps they were caught looking ahead a little bit in their game against BYU. So, do you think that they can pull this one off in the Bayou?
Yeah, I don't for a couple reasons. The loss that LSU had to Florida State was ugly, and again put a chip on their shoulder. I always look at teams who I think are really good but had an early loss, and they play with a little bit more edge, a little bit more desperation, and I feel that out of LSU, especially now that they get into conference play. They know that FSU loss was non-conference. If they come through and take care of business in the SEC, they've got a shot at the playoffs still, and I think they're that caliber a team. Um, they may not make it there, but they're certainly in the mix in the SEC. Arkansas's issues that they had against us on the offensive line, I don't know how you're going to fix that in a week. And maybe it was BYU was that strong. That would be awesome. If this offensive line shows out against LSU, I'm going to feel great about our D line. But we overwhelmed them, and I think we're a good D line, but I don't know that we're LSU's D line, and so I just don't see Arkansas having enough firepower to take care of business at LSU.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I'll be pulling for Arkansas. I'd be happy if they won the SEC, but it's probably not happening for them this weekend, unfortunately. Here's another top 25 matchup: Iowa at Penn State.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised Iowa's in the top 25, honestly. I don't know that they've really shown out much to show that they should be there. I think Penn State handles this comfortably. I think Iowa struggles through a lot of Big Ten play. I'm happy for them that they've had some good early season success, but the offense that is supposed to reach 24 points a game or whatever that agreement is for their offensive coordinator. I don't know if they're quite going to make it. They've they haven't been impressive. They haven't won impressively yet. And so maybe this is the week where they change everyone's mind and they go in and take care of Penn State. But Penn State's a great program right now, and I don't see Iowa State knocking them off.
Yeah, I get the sense that, not that I follow Penn State closely, but I get the sense that they're locked in this year, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And also, talk about Iowa being in the top 25, kind of a slight that Kansas didn't make it, but whoever I think wins out of the BYU Kansas game this weekend will probably be ranked going into the following, especially with all these top 25
Yeah,
unbeaten team matched up this week.
yeah, for sure.
All right, last pick: Ohio State at Notre Dame.
So excited for this game. And I have been a big Notre Dame naysayer in the past of just saying overranked because of the brand and they get to the playoff or BCS title game and just lay an egg. I mean, it felt like they've been overranked time and time again. But I like what they have going this year. They've looked really, really impressive, both offensive and defensively. Ohio State has struggled. It feels like there's cracks happening over there in the Ohio State offense. This is at Notre Dame. I'm taking Notre Dame, and I think this signals a changing of the guard a little bit for OSU. Um, I, I I wish schools would not have such knee-jerk reactions around coaches. I think Ryan Day is incredible, and I think they would do good to keep him around for another decade. But I'm afraid he's going to lose two or three. He's going to lose the big game um, to Michigan, and he's gonna be on the hot seat. I don't think it's right, but I don't think Ohio State has it this year to be able to run through the Big Ten, which has some really strong teams, some not so strong teams. But to me, this Notre Dame game is really the game that's going to kick that off to say, oh, look out for Ohio State this year. They're gonna struggle.
Yeah, I second everything you say, but none of it mattered because there's no way I was going to pick Ohio State. I grew up in Michigan, so
There you
so
go.
well, you laid out great points that I agree with. It didn't matter. I was picking Notre Dame either way. So, all right. So excellent. So those are our picks. We only differed on two of them, which is not going to help me
Whew.
make a lot of ground. um,
I'm playing defense with my picks.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to think like me and pick whatever I'm picking, and so
That's
that
right.
way
That's
now I
right.
can no longer. It's like holding the ball, not letting me get the ball back. So, all right. So Adam, well, thank you. We'll see how we do, and then also looks like I will be having another video this week to preview Kansas with the Ain't No Seats podcast, and so be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell. And so when that comes out, you can catch that and get a little preview of Kansas, a little more in depth than what we discussed, and get a sense. I watched a little bit of their content, of them discussing BYU. And this was kind of their reaction video after the Arkansas game. And they weren't too familiar with BYU, but they didn't seem too worried about it. But, maybe if that's the mindset from
Yeah.
Kansas coming into this game, then great. BYU loves
Yeah.
being your dog.
That's what
But
you hope.
it'll be really interesting to hear what they have to say and break it down for us. So be sure to do that. And thanks again, Adam, and go Cougs.
Awesome. Go Cougs.